goal of this is to really reduce time and improve the efficiency. So for example, for our finance team, we were doing sales forecasting and pipeline health, majority in Excel. And my task was to, create a new matrix and create a data pipeline that migrates data from Salesforce to Amazon Redshift, and then manipulate data in SQL and ultimately load it into Tableau to create a dashboard to share it with the users. And I think my experience really gave me the opportunity to work in a cross-functional team setting, and really helped me make business recommendations that really drive the business forward.
Okay, sounds like quite of experience. Very impressive. So yeah, you just mentioned that the product that you built for a customer, and including a full ETL pipeline also, and the end product is a dashboard. So yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about the ETL pipeline you're building?
Yeah, so the ETL pipeline for us at my current company, the majority of our data in terms of sales data, marketing data, we try to have it all centralized on Salesforce right now. And to migrate it into a data warehouse, we're using Python, and we used Airflow to open source Airflow to kind of migrate the data from Salesforce and load them into AWS Redshift. And in AWS Redshift, we're trying to recreate the raw data, but also do some kind of, we save the raw data in one of the schema, and we also created a few different new schemas based on each team's functions. So for sales team, we created more like sales-centered schema. For marketing team, we created more marketing-focused schema, and we loaded the data into the tables that they wanted. And from there, for my project, for example, we were trying to examine and monitor the pipeline health. So this really is based on the sales data. And what we did is we created a new schema specifically focused on open pipeline. And for this, we set a schedule to extract weekly sales pipeline information from the big sales data table. And we did some manipulations, creating new matrix, and ultimately load it into connect the database to connect the table from Redshift to Tableau, and created the dashboard in Tableau and shared it through an online link. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So what is the so you mean that the source data is from Salesforce?
That's right.
And, okay. And then so are you the individual that that are kind of work on the Salesforce data and then load it to the AWS Redshift cluster?
Yeah, so I work with a data engineer from the IT team. Mm-hmm. So he is really in charge of making sure the data, creating the scripts. I help, but he has the ownership owning the data from migrating from Salesforce to Redshift. And the part that I come in is really to help him making sure the data is correct, creating different tests, making sure the data is accurate, and also to create the schemas and the database that we need for each of the team.
Okay, gotcha. And so can you give me an example of how you test and monitor the data?
Yes, so one simple test that we did was there are different reporting that we do on Salesforce, and to recreate that, we will need different types of tables from. So for example, once the data engineer has pulled the raw data into the AWS Redshift and set up a schedule to update the data every day or every 2 days, I recreate the reporting that will be done on Salesforce in Redshift by creating a new table containing the reporting data. And through the reporting data, that I'm able to track whether every new week, whether the number is correct, the number of rows is correct, the aggregation value is the same. and then also to track whether the dashboard and the visualizations that we use this data on is correct.
Okay, I got it. So can I ask, what is the reason of the, how did you come up with this idea of kind of creating this reporting in Salesforce and comparing to the data that being loaded in the database?
Yeah, primarily because the sales team have a lot of the reporting set up in Salesforce that they are using on a weekly basis. For example, they're forecasting their weekly sales calls using reports from Salesforce. And they're also monitoring different type of promotional sales campaigns in Salesforce as well. So the easiest way for me to, compare the matrix, compare the number, whether they are correct or aligned, is to recreate what they are using in Salesforce. That way I have a clear comparison, not necessarily going to, line by line in the data, but also just comparing the aggregated results and making sure that every new week we are seeing the same number and same trend. That really help us, it's an easier way to test.
Okay, sounds good. That sounds like really a great way to monitor the data. And how often do you do this? And did you set up an automatically method?
Yeah, so in terms of the data pipeline, we had an automatic schedule to refresh the data every day, because that's just the most that makes sense to us. But in terms of for us to check the numbers, because we know day to day the number does not make a big difference, but we usually check it on a week-to-week basis, especially in the first month when we set it up. Because the first month we set it up, we have a original version of it, and then we're trying to consolidate the queries to optimize the performance of the queries. So just to making sure that every step, every improvements that we make, it did not break the end result and the data is still correct. So it took about a month for us to have a finalized version of the pipeline that we wanted.
Okay, and now it's being, so the monitoring process is still ongoing.
Yeah, the monitoring process is still going. The way we decided to do the monitoring in terms of pipeline is to set up different tests at different levels. For example, if the Salesforce data did not get pulled into the Amazon Redshift correctly, then we'll get the notification that that pipeline failed. If our individual tables, the query didn't run successfully, then we'll also get another notification that it failed. So each step of the way, we did set notifications. We did set different checkpoints to making sure that every day when the data refreshes, everything functions successfully. Yeah.
Okay. So during this process, did you have any encountered any challenges or any?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming from a data science, data analyst background, I really this was the first time I ever encountered something that includes system design, and this includes and primarily I meant that what is the correct workflow that takes the less time, uses the least amount of data needed, that produce the results that we want. Originally, I have breaking down the steps to 3 or 4 different steps because I was doing this offline. So I didn't have the correct database to build the pipeline queries. And to do this, I had to do a lot of different checkpoints by myself. So I broke down the process to 3 different steps. And ultimately, to recreate these 3 steps in the data pipeline took a lot longer time than what we wanted. It would take about a week to just recreate all the queries that I created offline in the Amazon Redshift. So what we ended up doing is we had a system design review and got an input from data engineer and the director level, our leaders, to consolidate all the steps into one. So ultimately, we combined and consolidated the queries to just one script. Instead of running a 3-step process to get our final table, we just ran one step to get a final table. Yeah.
Okay, so how much time did you decrease from the original version?
Yeah, so it took less than a day for us to implement the new query. So I would say it saved like at least 4 days of work.
Okay. That is very impressive. So I'm also curious about the automation process in this whole ETL pipeline. So once you're done with so data has been loaded into the database, and then so you said you create a schema and then set up a table, right? And I would say table or view. Is there any so how did you, is there any guidelines that you follow to create the whole process? Like how did you design how do you build the whole pipeline for the later part of this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of two-part that we did. So we try to always have a schema that saves the raw data from Salesforce in its original form without any sort of manipulations or engineering. And to create the eventual schema and the tables that we end up using for the dashboard, we kind of reverse engineered it. So we looked at the dashboard in terms of what are the variables or what are the fields that we need for this dashboard. And in that alone, there's different like methodologies that we can do the same thing. So for example, maybe we can have a pivoted table that shows every quarter in a column, or we can have more like a field that just represents a quarter, and we can filter based on that column to create the view that we want in dashboards. So that's really a discussion with the users and with the people who are going to maintain the pipeline to see what is the easiest way. Ultimately, we decided to go with the way that will require the least amount of manual updating. So one of the methods, for example, require us to go into the query every month and just add a new quarter as a value in the query. But another method, we don't have to do this manual step. All we have to do is go into the dashboard and drag a new field or change a filter to include a new value in it. So because Tableau is an easier tool for a user to use, so we ended up going with the latter method to get the fields that we need and reverse engineer the data that we needed, and then ultimately create queries that that extract data from the raw table, and then do the manipulation in SQL to create the table that contains just the number of fields that we need for the dashboard.
Okay. Am I understanding you correctly that you have kind of like two versions? One is raw data you stored in the database, and then you have an aggregated level table, or
exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Because for the raw data, we want to always keep the raw data as it is with our engineer, just so that we have a single source of truth. But we also don't want to run the dashboard on a raw table, right? Because that requires a lot more engineered, and it just is too much. So we created an aggregated level of table that contains just the level of information we need. So for this dashboard, we only included data for the past 4 quarters, and we only included about 6 fields instead of hundreds of fields from the raw table. This help us to like making sure the dashboard is as clean as it is. The data pipeline takes the least time to run, but also help the people who are going to maintain it make their job easier.
Okay. I see. For the aggregated level table, so that is the one that is directly connecting to the Tableau
dashboard.
Front end. Okay.
That's right.
And is that so how did you use so is that like a static data source that has been scheduled refresh routinely, or it's like a live data source?
Yes. So for this one, we decided to do a live connection to Amazon Redshift from Tableau to Amazon Redshift. using like a generic user account. This is because to do the schedule refresh, just in case that something fails. We want the notification to come from the Amazon Redshift part and not from the Tableau part. So we want, so the way to monitor this and testing this, the data engineer is kind of the one who sets up checkpoints. And if we were to set up checkpoints, the refresh in Tableau, that means the analysts who are using the dashboards will get a notification that the pipeline or the data did not refresh correctly. But if it's a live connection, we would then get the notification from the database part where the extraction or the query didn't run correctly.
Okay. And is there any mechanism that you set up to just kind of monitor if the connection is failed, or if the refresh is kind of like if there are any issues with the data?
Yeah, so really the mechanism that we did do to making sure that the dashboard is always updated correctly is, you know, because the data for the dashboard refreshes every week. So every week at a specific point where the query is run, in Amazon Redshift, we will be able to then check whether that query is run successfully or not. And from there, we will be able to see from a dashboard to see whether the data is loaded or not. So it's like two parts. So making sure the query runs correctly, and this is done from the Amazon Redshift part. And this is through like an automated scheduled job to run every week. And on the dashboard part, it's really for the analysts to check it every week to making sure that new data is populated correctly, to populate it. Yeah.
Okay. So what if in the like the real world scenario, you know that so sometimes you may, if you miss to observe any of the data issue, but it kind of reported by the customers, then how would you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think that one might not be the most applicable for this project because there's no customer facing, there's no customer input data here. All the data comes from Salesforce. So this table, the data that we're using is the pipeline table. So it calculates how many prospects that we have in our database that will close in a certain quarter, and the revenue that we expect them to close by. So all this data is existing from Salesforce and pulled into Amazon Redshift directly. So I don't think that